And very lastly on this podcast, guys, Nicholas, our co-host here on the channel, made a video about this just this past week. That being Valorant. I know we say a lot of great things, maybe a lot of skeptical things about the future of this because it's going to be crazy to see how this does progress as an esport.
This is a rarity in esports. I don't think we've ever seen an esports game develop like this.
No, and I think Fortnite would be maybe a comparison, but even then, totally different because Fortnite itself came out of nowhere, didn't have this kind of hype behind it. So we're definitely seeing a lot of comparisons of, okay, did we build too high of expectations for a game like Valorant? Are teams over-investing or making great investments? It's going to be a crazy talking point. The topic for this one, though, being, has Valorant, is it esports right now? Is it entertainment? Did it rush too fast into esports, as Riot Games has actually now announced through Valorant their first official series of tournaments, which is going to be very fun to see.
Absolutely.
And speaking of seeing, though, you have to ask the question, are people actually watching? The teams being involved, if you want to give a few details as of right now for the Ignition series?
Yeah, we have very sparse details because, of course, this was just recently announced. So for now, we know that 20 different organizations are going to be involved, both esports as well as third party. Right now, we know G2 is going to be involved, hosting their own tournament series as part of the Riot Ignition series. We think T1 will likely,
TSM, I assume.
All the big names.
I assume any team that has, a big name in League of Legends that's also in Valorant.
I would assume that 100 Thieves has probably got something in the works.
Yeah, maybe a Gen G. We'll see. Cloud9, we'll see.
The most fascinating thing to me about this is the fact that Riot earlier announced that they weren't going to be hands-on involved with the tournament series, period, in the immediate future. And that was merely like a month or two ago. And it's wild to see a company walk this back so fast. And I have to wonder if this is in reaction to how so much of the community has been talking about, is Valorant really a watchable esport?
Yeah, and I think also it could be a misinterpretation. I think I took it the same way, though, as Riot wanted to be primarily way hands-off. This, to me, seems more than that. And maybe that's just us. But I think also from my side of things, what I see it as, we see a lot of these teams so far that maybe are going to be involved. They say 20 organizations. We maybe have a handful of full rosters from well-known organizations right now. And so from the ground up, we have Riot Games. At least they're doing this. But it does make you wonder, there's not going to be too much prize pools from what we've seen so far. I imagine 50 to 100K. And even then, what we've seen so far from G2 and I believe T1 slowly making these announcements, we're not even seeing fully signed teams competing. It's a lot of teams of creators and personalities.
Influencers.
Yeah.
I think just like in the first event that's happening, it's mainly influencers, right? Influencers and content creators.
For G2s?
Yeah,
Which is very weird because G2, they have a speculated roster we've talked about, and they even have two different speculated players who we think are going to sign to their single Valorant roster competing on two different teams. I don't know. It's very, very weird.
It's weird.
And we don't exactly know how to react, so we'd love to gauge your guys' reaction as well. I do think I take from Nell from the Counter-Strike scene, in case you guys have not seen that. We've also seen several articles out there as well. As of right now, and maybe rightfully so, Valorant is entertainment because there's no really whole esports side of things right now.
Yeah, we're 100% right.
Besides the 200K Twitch Rivals event, we're not going to be seeing big money there. We're not going to be seeing big events with fully signed rosters, or at least that many of them, because they just aren't there quite yet. But I guess maybe to end on, we are seeing slowly gigantic organizations turn their eyes and actually reveal their gigantic investments. We've already talked about T1. We've already talked about TSM. G2 has now entered the door firmly as going to be
very strong.
Are going to be that's what Ocelot, quote unquote, has now said, heavily investing. So, the hype is still there. Expectations are still there. When it comes time for tournaments and viewership, to me, it's not there yet.
I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated to see how this game does long-term, both as a game at the base level, as well as an esport. Because we've seen viewership numbers plummet across the board.
I think that's a fair way to put it.
Yeah, and, I don't think anybody really predicted it would be this severe a drop-off. People thought, like, oh, maybe a couple less people will be interested.
I just didn't know, to be honest.
Yeah.
And especially because we just talked about Fortnite's still doing well. Fortnite is still doing well, especially when they have big events. They get big viewership. Warzone's doing tremendous. And those are a little bit of a crossover here and there, especially when it comes time for streamers and people who bring big viewers. We've seen the summits and the Dr. Disrespects and the nade shots and the Tifus go away from Valorant already.
They've all fallen off. And that's kind of been the fascinating part of all this to me. Like, I've had access to Valorant for quite a while. I've had it installed on my machine several times.
Yeah.
I've yet to boot it up once because who cares?
And
there's so many great video games out there.
Yeah.
So many competitive video games. Like, it's just hard to slot Valorant in there when, like, it's just CSGO with a shiny coat of paint.
I'll bring one last point into it. Slasher on Twitter brought a great point about, is anyone watching these tournaments? Because they are 50K, maybe 100K events with not even teams that you don't have a team you can cheer for because those rosters are not complete yet. Is anyone watching this game? I've watched a few grand finals here and there just to see how the good rosters that make it to grand finals that are complete do. I'm not going to watch open qualifiers of these mixed teams that aren't signed yet.
Yeah, that's more than fair. Like, yeah, it's like I think I'd only watch grand finals, not even quarters, not semis. I think right now it's hard to justify.
And especially because it's like we got a handful of maps, 4 maps out.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know.
Very few maps, very few characters. Matches take a good minute.
Yes.
If you want to sit down and watch a Valorant game, that's a time investment.
And then, do you get excited watching it? We're gonna keep you guys posted how it develops right now. To me, Valorant is entertainment. Even then, maybe struggling to entertain out there as well. Valorant Esports is still developing. Riot is now hands-on a bit more than we thought. We will see what comes next.